Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Oh Really Podcast. My name is Jess, and I am your podcast host today, and I actually don't have a guest today. Today, it's just little old me talking shit to you. I wanted to do a little bit of a reflection episode about, what's been happening with Oh Really Podcast, and I actually have some really exciting news for Phase 2. I've been calling it Phase 2 of Oh Really Podcast because I put my heart and soul into the first chunk of Oh Really. And now I'm really, really looking forward to just elevating the fuck out of it and going to Phase 2. So Oh Really Podcast, obviously it's about all those taboo topics of the world, okay? So we've got the vulnerable, we've got the challenging, and we've got the spicy taboo topics. Now, this is a concept I thought of over a year ago, like when I was going through the motions of creating Oh Really Podcast. It's not something that just happens overnight. It takes time, it takes creativity, and it's been all that stuff combining to finally produce what it is today. And it's just, I'm so proud of it, honestly. I've always been someone who is very open about talking about things like this, and I really love that I am a safe space for people to have these discussions with. And I reflect back on the 12 episodes that I've put out, and I'm just like really, really fucking proud. So proud of all those episodes that I've been able to produce because they are very, very vulnerable and very challenging. And yeah, definitely some of them are quite spicy as well, but it's just everything that I imagined and creating that awesome community, that awesome safe space, and talking about shit that people are too afraid to talk about. I feel very blessed in my life that I've surrounded myself with like friends and, close ones around me that can talk about this stuff without judgment. But I've really made sure to attract those people in my life because that's what I'm like. I like to talk about this stuff and, the type of friendships, I guess, that you have in the world. Sometimes you've got great friends, but I really feel like if you can't talk about this type of stuff, the heavy stuff, the vulnerable shit that we go through in life, that's a different type of friendship. And when you do get those friendships in your life, like they are a game changer and, they're so amazing because you can really wholeheartedly be your true authentic self. But there are people out there that don't have that. You haven't found your people yet. And you haven't found, when people talk about your love life and you can't find your person, that takes time. But, your true soulmates in this life, your true fucking soulmates are your friends. Guys, women, they, them, whatever you're into, whatever you go for, they come and go. Romantic parts of your life come and go. But when it comes to like having proper, real friends in your life, they're your true soulmates. So if you haven't found those friendship soulmates to talk to, they will come. Just keep putting it out there, keep being authentically you, and they'll come. But when you find those people, it's so awesome because you can talk about this vulnerable shit in life. If you don't have those people, that's okay. You can come to Oh Really Podcast, and this can be the platform. This can be where you have the safe space to talk about that stuff, okay? So that's why I created it, all right? Because I love talking about this shit. So before I go into what's coming up with Phase 2, I just wanted to do, sorry if you're watching the video, I've got the runniest nose and I keep wiping it, but if you want to watch the video, go for it. So I want to recap about all the episodes that I've been able to produce and that I'm just so excited for, and I just love them so much. So I launched Oh Really Podcast with the life of a male sex worker, and I interviewed Reese. Now, the reason I made this the number one episode is because, well, sex sells, everyone fucking loves the spicy stuff. And when I look at the analytics of Oh Really Podcast, every time there's a sexual one, literally, it's just like this humongous spike. It is actually so funny to see. It is because that's what people are so curious about, right? It's the spicy stuff, which don't worry, there's going to be so much more spicy content coming this way. Don't you worry. But that's why I wanted to start off with Reese, because that one, it's just like such a curious one. Everyone's so curious about the life of a sex worker. And Reese, I think, is so interesting in particular because I think people imagine sex workers predominantly to be women, sleeping with a man. But because Reese is a man himself, putting a service out there, but he's not actually bisexual and he's not biflexible. He doesn't get with men and women. He only gets with women. So he is a straight male sex worker that only gets with women. So to me, I just found that super fascinating because he is very handsome. He's so charismatic, and you just, if you passed him in the street, there's no way that you would know what he did as his career. But he honestly, wholeheartedly loves his career. He loves what he brings to the table. He loves changing women's lives. He really empowers women to like take control of their sexuality and their desires in life. And what he does is amazing. And I think it's really awesome to speak to someone that's in that field and hear what actually happens behind the scenes, because a lot of people prejudge that. And there's a lot of stigma to that world. But what Reese is doing and what he's actually kind of giving back, it's just incredible. And I love hearing him speak. And I've interviewed him a few times, actually. So I was just really, really excited to have him on the podcast. So really proud of that one. If you haven't listened to it yet, 100% listen to it. It is so spicy and so interesting. But yeah, just recapping all the episodes, really loved that one. And that is why I made that number one. Now, the next episode I did, The Female Body Unraveled, Exploring Anatomy and Pleasure. Now, I interviewed Eleanor Hadley for this. And if you don't know Eleanor Hadley, get the fuck on her Instagram. She is such an incredible person. I've met her quite a few times over the years. I don't actually know the very first time. I think I've been exposed to her on Instagram, and I used to stalk her on Instagram, and I met her at Sexpo Australia, and I was so excited when I saw her because I was actually doing the media coverage for Sexpo Brisbane. And so I had a microphone on, I had a sexy suit on, and I was walking around interviewing all the porn stars and, all the cool people in the world of Sexpo. And I saw her, and she was with Ellie from Comfortable in My Skin. And I was like, oh my God, Eleanor Hadley. And I said to her, I was such a fan. And because I was doing the media coverage, I was like, Eleanor, can I interview you? And of course, she was like, hell yeah. Like, oh, of course I want to be interviewed on Sexpo. So I actually got to interview her, have some one-on-one time with her, connect with her. She even got to pull me on the stage, and I got a lap dance from her. Now, she is all about just female empowerment, female body, like loving your body. She does these incredible, like, how do you explain it, like body empowerment sessions where she teaches you how to just like move your body, and it's in such a sexual way, but it's nothing to do with performing. It's more of like you're doing it for yourself, you're moving to feel sexy for yourself. But if you want to do it for a partner, then she'll teach you. She also is a sexologist. She knows absolutely everything and anything about the female body. And she's a bisexual lady herself. So she talks about, giving oral to men, giving oral to women, tips and tricks on how to be more intimate and how to just, how to rock people's world in the bedroom and how just to kind of understand yourself more. So she does a lot of like one-on-one coaching, but even just like her Instagram and her website, she just gives out so much value. And she's won some incredible awards recently as well. So she, to me, I'm the biggest fangirl when it comes to Eleanor Hadley. So when I was doing an episode about, the female body, I thought, I know exactly who I want to interview for this episode. Like, I have so many ideas for certain episodes, but I won't do the episode unless I find the perfect guest for it. Like, I'm not just going to do it with anyone random, like I want to get the best guest to give that episode, like, and just make it amazing. And she 100% did that. I learned so much about my own anatomy. I just feel like people know the very basic 101 when it comes to their own anatomy as a female vulva owner. And I think both, men and women can get so much value from that episode. So we covered a lot. The female body is amazing, and she did an absolutely incredible job with that episode. The next one I did, because I'd done kind of a spicy one, and I mean, female body to me is spicy, but it wasn't like super, super spicy. But I really wanted to get to more of those really vulnerable chats, just to kind of showcase that really wasn't just about sex. It wasn't just about like all that stuff in the world, okay? I wanted to show that I wanted to talk about challenging shit too, like the tough shit in the world that we go through. And I interviewed one of my girlfriends named Nikita, and we spoke about alopecia. And alopecia, if you've not heard of it before, it's balding for women, like she gets male pattern baldness, basically. So pretty heavy topic to deal with. Women are very attached to their hair, and it really showcases how we feel. It really, it shows how confident we are. Like, if we've got a good hair day, man, we're fucking like feeling amazing. But if you're having a bad hair day, it really makes you feel crap. But when you're dealing with thinning hair and hair loss and balding, that's a shit thing to deal with. And it's really, really hard, especially in the dating scene and navigating all that, traveling. Like, you wouldn't even think about it, but like, traveling the world and not being able to like swim and all that stuff because of the products that you're putting in your hair to try to mask it. So we actually talked about our whole journey about being diagnosed with this at such a young age. Certain tips and tricks she's had to do, like special powders to put on the scalp just to kind of make it blend so you can't see the bald patches. And then now she's actually progressed into this incredible, like, she's honestly so authentic and so real, and she just really embraces who she is, and she's so open about her alopecia. But she now goes down the route of topper wigs, which, I mean, I didn't even know that was a thing. I had no idea that a topper wig even existed. When you think of wigs, you just think of an entire wig. But if you've got balding and you've got thinning hair, you can actually just get a wig that goes on the top, clips in really securely, and it's just a half wig, basically. She has so many different styles, so many different looks. She looks fucking amazing every single day, because imagine just like waking up and then just putting on your hair and you just look fucking flawless. So I really appreciated her vulnerability on the episode, but also I think people that are going through that and then listening to that episode are going to be like fucking so inspired by, just her zest for life and just how confident she is in her skin. And that's what I wanted to bring to the table with Oh Really Podcast. I'm talking about these vulnerable topics, but I'm making sure to interview people who, have really just accepted that that's their life, and they're not going to sit there. You can go down two paths. You can go down the whole like, oh, why me, and be so sad, and or you can be like, okay, this is what's happened, fucking sucks, but let's try and make this a positive. And that's the type of people I gravitate towards in life generally. But they're definitely the type of people that I'm going to be interviewing on these particular episodes, because I want that message to come across. I want people to listen to a really podcast and learn something and be inspired, and then go away from the episode being like, fuck yeah, that's what I want. And Nikita delivered that, 100% delivered that. And I'm so proud of everything that she's gone through and where she is now. She's so happy, and she's just glowing. She's glowing every single day. And she's a dear friend of mine. And I just, fucking love it. Now, another one I really wanted to go through, because it's something that I've dealt with before, like many times. And it's a sensitive topic. And I've actually been approached before by men saying that they have been so, I don't even know what the word is, but they've been so shocked at how well I handled the situation, because I do generally try and be very, sensitive to these types of things, and that is erectile dysfunction. And so I did an episode called Breaking the Silence, Navigating Erectile Dysfunction. And honestly, it's a shit thing. Honestly, it's a shit thing to go through, but so many people go through it. That's the thing. So I found this amazing guy named Ryan, and I found him through a platform called Beducated. And Beducated is like an online platform where you can learn so much to do with the world of sex. And he actually had already done some content on erectile dysfunction on there. And I was like, he is the perfect guy. So I stalk hard when I find a guest, because I really want to make sure they're good for the episode. And I stalked him and stalked him and stalked him. And I was like, this guy knows his shit. Like, he does so much content about the world of sex and pleasing, and talks about those vulnerable topics like erectile dysfunction. So I was like, he's great. He's also young, he's only in his 30s, and he's a good looking guy. And I just really wanted to showcase and say, this happens to guys at all ages. You can't just prejudge and think that guys in their 50s and above get erectile dysfunction, because every guy goes through it. Every guy goes through it, and there's so many factors behind the scenes of why a guy goes through that. And obviously nerves is a huge one. Getting with somebody for the first time is a nerve-wracking experience, especially the more you lack them. So that was a really cool episode. I'm so glad we did that, because, as I said, I've always tried to be very sensitive when it comes to situations like that, because like it happens. It absolutely happens. And it's just such a normal thing. And most of the time it is just nerves, but it could be other background things going on too. So we went through so much. And do you know if guys have a pelvic floor? Like, I didn't even know guys had a pelvic floor. But doing pelvic floor exercises, it it decreases the risk of getting erectile dysfunction and overcoming it by like this. I forgot the statistic in the top of my head, but it was like a crazy statistic by just doing that simple exercise. But, you go to the doctor and you tell them and they're just like, here's some pills. Don't just pop pills. Pills don't fix everything. Take the pills if you need them, but they don't fix everything. There are other ways. So when I found that out, I was like, whoa, that's crazy. So really fucking loved that episode. Sorry, I told you I've got a runny nose. The next episode that I'm really proud of, like all episodes, was porn addiction. Now, I've done one episode on this so far, but I actually really want to do more episodes on this because we only kind of scratched the surface. I think there's so much to cover in the world of porn addiction and like kind of, I guess, understanding where addiction comes into play, because you think about it, like, is a daily porn, like, is watching porn daily bad or good, and it depends what type of porn. It depends how many times per day you're doing it. It depends if it's affecting your sexual relationships with other people. There's so many different things out there, and a lot of people can be quite opinionated when it comes to porn. They can say, I don't like my partner watching porn. Some people think it's cheating if a partner watches porn. I have my own views on it, and I'll talk about them through each episode, as need be, and everyone is entitled to their opinion. But I really wanted to do one on porn addiction because I feel like that itself is a very taboo thing. And for a guy to, I say guy because I'm sure there are women out there that have porn addictions, but come on, it's predominantly men. But, I feel like there's no space for a guy to say like, hey, I actually think I have a problem. Like, I think I have a problem with porn addiction. Like, it's a really difficult conversation to have with their friends or, whatever. And if they go to the doctor, like, what's the next step, right? So I think it's an awkward space for someone to be in and to kind of navigate that. So I thought, let's do a podcast episode about it. So I interviewed Ben, and Ben is just a huge advocate for just talking about this shit. Him and his partner Jazz do an Instagram account, and they're super open and honest on it, and they talk about vulnerability and how much they love being vulnerable and open. So I thought, he sounds perfect. So yeah, had a little chat with him. He came on the podcast and talked about his journey of, realizing that he actually did have a proper porn addiction. And he's now in that stage of his life where he does not watch porn at all. He actually can't even masturbate because of like what's happened in the past of his porn addiction and how much overuse he had done in terms of masturbation. So that was like quite an interesting thing to listen to. I was like, wow, like what a journey that he's gone through, and he had that, reflection, and he was able to do that himself. But wild times, because honestly, sometimes you think it's just something fun that you just do every day or you get into a habit. But yeah, when it starts to affect your life, and it starts to affect relationships, it starts to affect, cancelling plans or maybe not doing anything on the weekend because you just want to sit home and masturbate. That's when it's really affecting your life. We only have one life to live. And look, I'm a fan for masturbation. Okay. I'm all for it, but there is definitely a line. So yeah, definitely love that one. Now this next episode, still hands down, I feel like it's one of my favorite episodes, and I feel like there's another word I'm trying to think of. It was my favorite episode only because I've been podcasting for a long time, about 3 years. I've done 2 other podcasts, and I'm starting another one at the moment, actually a nursing style one. But I did another healthcare one. I did another one about taboo topics, and I love podcasting so much. But this particular episode, I think to me, it's just got so much stigma and so much taboo around it. And I just felt so so grateful that I had found finally the perfect guest to talk about this. And they're in such a positive headspace. Like it really takes a lot when you're talking about a topic and you really want to align it with the right person. And that was living with HIV and fighting HIV shame. And I interviewed Nathaniel Hall, and it just all aligns so well. I've always wanted to do an episode about HIV. It is something that is still so heavily stigmatized and has such a bad name. It has such a bad name, and people are saying a lot of the wrong phrases, a lot of the wrong terminology. It's just such a big topic in this world still. And a lot of people are very quiet. I don't know a single person who is HIV positive besides Nathaniel Hall, but there's someone to openly say that they've got HIV is a huge thing. So I was like, wow, I have found a guy who has a story and he's willing to share the story. But his story was like heartbreaking. He got HIV at the age of 16 with his first sexual experience. So he's had to live with this from the very beginning of his whole sexual journey. And he lived in shame for 15 years and didn't even tell his family until 15 years later. And it's now in the last 5 years that he's been in that headspace, and he's been so open and honest, and not only just to his family, but to the world. And so much positivity has come his way in terms of like him being so vulnerable and sharing that story. And he's in such a beautiful space now. He's got this amazing partner, and he's doing so well. But that 15 years of him living in shame and hearing his journey about going through all that, especially back then when it was just so big and it was just had such a horrible name and such a huge stigma. I was so grateful to have Nathaniel on the podcast. So to me, it was a heavy episode, and I learned so much myself, and I feel like a lot of people will learn so much about HIV with that one. So very grateful for that one. The next one, we got behind the scenes of a stripper. Oh, had to do this one, and I knew exactly who I was going to interview, and that's Danny O. Danny O also lives in Brisbane, and I met her a few years ago actually, and I've actually done some of her classes, and she is so sexy, honestly. Woo. I'm a heterosexual lady, but seriously, I look at her and I'm just like, she's doing things to me. Like, her body is just mesmerizing. I just don't understand how she does it. Anyway, she's been doing stripping and pole dancing from the age of 16, and she used to be a competitive swimmer. She stopped doing swimming, and her mum actually said to her, like, I think, because she's such an athletic chick, she's just always doing things. Her mum was like, I reckon you should do pole dancing. I think you'd be great at it. And her mum took her to her first pole dancing class, and she did it, loved it. By the time she turned 18, boom, she's at the strip clubs. And, her mum is still like her number one fan. She looks incredible. She's just got such an amazing personality as well. Like, she's been able to learn so many people skills with this career. She is honestly amazing. And then right now, she actually is in the space of doing so many female empowerment workshops, and it's not about the whole performing element to men or being on a stage. It's about a safe space of women and learning techniques, doing floor work, doing chair work, lap dances, and women go into that space feeling sexy, looking sexy, and doing these amazing dances, and they leave being like, hell yeah, I got it. So yeah, super proud of the space she's in at the moment. I love her workshops. They're like literally an hour workshop, and you're having the time of your life. And for some reason, I've learned an entire dance choreographic scene. I don't even understand dancing. I'm terrible at it. But for some reason, she teaches the choreography. And for some reason, I've learnt this whole dance in the space of like an hour, and I'm performing it in front of people and getting videotaped. And I'm like, how do I do that in 1 hour? That's crazy. And I'm like the most clumsy ass, uncoordinated bitch you've ever met. So I was like, how did I do this? But I had so much fun, honestly. So yeah, that was such a great episode. That was on my couch at my home as well. Next episode we did was Tackling a Low Libido, and that was with Mariah. She's all the way in Germany. And she's actually the founder of Beducated, that website I spoke about earlier. Beducated is that platform about where you can go on and you can learn all about anything and everything sexual. It's a really safe way to kind of get education in the sex space. And she actually has like educational porn on there too. So, if you wanted to learn how to give a blowjob and different techniques, she's actually got educational porn on there that you can watch, and it actually shows you all these different techniques, and it's got people doing it to each other to show the techniques. It's got diagrams, it's got like all this stuff, and they talk about pegging, they talk about vulva massage, they talk about prostate massage. So yeah, man, it's a good old website. I would have a look at it if I was you. But Mariah jumped on and spoke about tackling a low libido and just normalizing that, we all go through it. Everybody goes through a low libido in their life, and it's okay. And she just talked about ways that she managed it and ways that her partner managed it, how it affected her relationships, and just to kind of normalize it. We all go through this shit. You don't have to be ready to have sex every fucking minute of the day. You know, you do go through low libido periods, and it is okay. It's not shameful. You know, both men and women go through this. So yeah, that was a very fascinating episode. And then these next 2 episodes were a huge awakening for me, I feel. You know, I'll really podcast, you know, I've definitely shared some things about myself, and that was that I was recently diagnosed with ADHD, which, I mean, I've always known. And I think people that do finally get a diagnosis, they obviously always know that something's a little different, quirky about themselves. And it's always on the kind of to-do list to get checked. But yeah, when you do go down the path of seeing a, you know, psychiatrist and getting the official diagnosis and then having a treatment plan, and yeah, it's quite an eye-opener, and it can do some pretty incredible things for you. So I interviewed Dr. Hannah Carell, who is a clinical neuropsychologist, and I've interviewed her before in the past, which is why I've already kind of had that connection. She specializes in ADHD and autism, and specifically for women, and she's just so passionate about that space. You know, she's actually involved in the committee. I think it's the DC, oh God, I forgot what it was called. DCM. She's very passionate about this book. Anyway, I feel like it's DCM. But anyway, she is one of the people that are now in the DCM to talk about ADHD with women, because fun fact, women were never included in the study because they thought of things like hormones and stuff like that. They were like, oh, no, we just won't put them in the study. So ADHD is very much focused on little boys, you know, and boys and girls present very differently with ADHD. Our brains are wired differently. So that is why so many people are now getting diagnosed, especially women. And it's just so fascinating, that entire space. So I did 2 episodes with Dr. Hannah Carell. One of them was unpacking ADHD, and then the other one was ADHD and risk-taking behaviors, because we wanted to talk about the dark side of ADHD. And when we were off camera, after we did the first episode, I was chatting to Dr. Hannah about kind of the dark side. And she said to me, she goes, no one ever in the media world, she's been in so many media programs, you know, The Project, blah, blah, blah. She's been everywhere. She goes, no one ever wants to discuss the dark side of ADHD. I was like, I want to discuss that. I want to talk about the taboo shit, because no one wants to talk about the taboo bad side of this stuff. And she was so excited to do this. So we scheduled another interview, and we talked about ADHD and risk-taking behaviors. And I have had a lot of people reach out to me, you know, within my circle, and then also just on my little O'Reilly platform. And remember, I'm really like tiny, like I'm a fucking nobody. And even my O'Reilly Instagram, I've got like 200 people. Like I don't have that many people, because remember, I am a nobody. I am starting O'Reilly podcast as just little old me, just trying to creep on out there in the podcast world. And considering my own personal friendship, you know, people that I have on my own social media, and then my little 200 on O'Reilly, and then my listeners, I've been contacted a lot of times with just that small circle of people that I know. So I was like, that's interesting that I have had that many people reach out to me. Not to mention all the other people that don't even have my Instagram and stuff. Like they can't really reach out to me, which is why I'm doing this episode, so I can tell you how to reach out to me, guys. But ADHD is like a very big hot topic at the moment. And I want to do some more episodes about this space, because there is a lot more to cover, especially with women with ADHD. Sorry to diss the men here, but like you have enough studies for you, so you guys can just go piss off. The women, we don't have enough studies out there, and we're still learning so much about ourselves. So definitely a space I want to, you know, get into a little bit more, especially like ADHD and like dating, and like, you know, we talked about like the financial thing and the impulsivity. There's just, oh my God, there's so much, honestly. I will be covering more, so stay tuned. Another episode, just to recap, during my recap series, swinging from a husband's perspective. Swinging is a juicy, juicy topic, isn't it? Everyone wants to know about swinging. Swinging is actually quite an outdated word, but I use the word swinging in the episode title because everyone knows what swinging is, right? But, you know, the whole non-monogamy style world is becoming a thing now. It is becoming people's lifestyles, and more people are open about it. You know, even if you go on an online dating app, you'll see lots of people on there and then saying, hey, yeah, I'm in an open relationship, or, you know, we're just looking for a third for some fun. Like it's just a normal thing now. And Gage spoke so beautifully actually about, his experience with him and his wife and, why they do it and then, the positive experiences they've had with it. And they actually own an app that's mainly based in the UK, but it's coming to Australia now. It's called Swing Hub. And they created this app to create a community where, people could get into the lifestyle with no judgment. And it absolutely blew up. And they're doing such an incredible thing in that space. And now that it's coming over to Australia. So, yeah, if it's something that you're interested in, going to Swing Hub. It's on the App Store right now. It's so good. They've got so many security features that are within the app. You can't even screenshot. If you screenshot, it just goes black. And I just think that is such a cool tool to have, especially on an app like that. If you're really scared about, oh, what if somebody sees me? But just remember, if somebody sees you, it's because they're on the freaking app too. But yeah, really awesome security features. Definitely recommend it if you're in that space. I've got friends that are in the swinging community and they use it and they love it. And then my final episode out of the 12 is Sex and Disability with Evan Sweeney. Such an interesting topic. Honestly, to talk about sex and disability is something that I really want to focus more on. I want to do more and more episodes about this because even in this episode, there were certain things I was asking Evan, but he can't answer it because, he can't answer for every single person's disability because everybody is different and there are a bazillion disabilities out there. Evan, for example, has cerebral palsy. He is wheelchair bound and he's also non-verbal. So we had his carer actually doing the kind of the vocal assist during the interview, and I'd already pre-written all the questions. But, he has his own limitations and he has his own way of navigating sex and intimacy in his life with his own disability. But I really wanted to do more episodes in the space of spinal cord injuries, and how they navigate, sex and intimacy, and, stroke. If someone's had a stroke, I actually just went to a stroke conference recently and I was really impressed that this survivor had talked about his story and they did a list of all his stuff that he does as an outpatient. And one of them actually said sex and relationships. And I was like, oh, and the chick that was speaking said, it's something that, is very taboo to talk about. But this guy in particular was in his 30s and he had a stroke. So they gave him the brochure, but, are they going to give people in their 50s the same brochure or are they just going to give it to the ones in their 30s? Because people in their 50s still want sex and intimacy. So, it still needs to be spoken about because there's still a space where this is not getting acknowledged. But I was really impressed when I saw that actually. But yeah, that's definitely something I want to talk about a lot more. But so that was a recap of the 12 episodes that I've already put out on Oh Really podcast. As you can tell, I'm super proud. I love every single one of those episodes so fucking much. And they are really, really perfect mix of the vulnerable, of the challenging, and the spicy, and what I have planned for a really podcast for phase 2. I'm bringing it to you now. So I've decided to join Patreon. And Patreon is a platform where people that are, creators, such as myself, can have a platform and a safe space and create a community for their OG proper listeners, right? Now, the reason I'm doing this is because I want to share so much more about myself, In a really podcast, I have shared little snippets, little nuggets of my personal life, but I've really tried to be careful of how much I share, because I've been podcasting for years and I've always had co-hosts, or maybe I've been on a corporate podcast, or I haven't actually shared much about myself, but there's always lessons I've learned with other podcasts that I've done. And I decided with Oh Really, I was like, well, I won't overshare. I'll just focus on the topic and focus on the guest and focus on the audience. And that's what I'm going to do. But I really do love sharing. I fucking love it. But it is a very scary thing to do on your own when you don't have a co-host with you to share certain things with. So, in terms of the ADHD, that already was a huge thing for me and wanting to share that publicly. But there is so much more within that space that I want to share. And there's space about, my upbringing. There's space about other parts of my personality and other experiences I've gone through, and my dating life, my relationship life, my sex life, my other vulnerabilities that I actually really want to dive into and really want to share. But, there is limitations when it comes to public platforms. So I've decided for those particular episodes, think about roughly 2 episodes a month. They're going to be Patreon only episodes. So what that means is on Spotify, for example, because Spotify is the main one that people use, but I am on everything. I'm on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Amazon Music, the whole jam. But on Spotify, you'll see an episode and it will have a little lock symbol. And those lock symbols are just for Patreon-only members. So if you click on the episode, it just means you have to be a member within O'Reilly to listen to the episode. And it means that I would have chosen that episode in particular because that's a vulnerable one of where I'm sharing something really personal about myself. And I just want it, and I don't mind sharing it. I want to share it, but I want to share it with people who are supporters of me, supporters of me and what I'm creating with O'Reilly Podcast and creating that community. And so if you go onto Patreon, onto O'Reilly Podcast, you can see there's different tier levels. And honestly, there is so much shit that I'm going to be putting on there. I am so excited. So after this episode, we're doing a herpes series. So herpes, HSV1, HSV2, herpes, the STD. It's something I'm very open about. I was diagnosed about 6 years ago after a sexual experience, got symptoms, had the whole conversation about being like, oh no, I've been checked, that's okay, let's just have unprotected sex. And bam, look what I got. It's shit, especially because I was 3 months out of a 4-year relationship where, my heart was broken. I'd been cheated on. I was getting back out on the horse. I was, dating and I was having some sex, and I decided to have unprotected sex with somebody that I knew. I actually did have history with them. I knew them. So when we did have the conversation after having unprotected sex, being like, oh, we shouldn't have done that. That was bad. And he said, don't worry, I've been checked recently. And I was kind of like, oh, okay, that's good. I've just come out of relationships. So obviously I'm okay. And I still got hit. And I think it's a really, really shocking thing to go through. And I want to dive into that so much more because it's definitely a space that I really want to educate people, and I really want people to understand they're not alone. And it doesn't mean that your dating life is ruined or your sex life is ruined at all. As I said, this happened 6 years ago, and look at me now. I'm fine. I get out there and there's a lot in that space that I want to share. So I've got an episode that'll be coming out with Lockie. I've got a guy coming on the podcast with me. So it's going to be herpes from a guy's perspective. And we go through so much together. It's honestly such a powerful story. But then the next episode we're going to be talking about is very much more vulnerable. And that is going to be one of the Patreon only episodes. So that's an example of kind of how I'm going to be formatting my episodes. So if I have a really juicy topic, I'll try and put one out there that's a free one for everybody to listen to. But then I'll be taking another kind of really vulnerable plus one where if you're an OG, proper listener, then you want to kind of go into the Patreon and you can actually listen to that one. I've actually created these mugs and I'm going to share it on the video. It depends if you're on video or not. YouTube and Spotify have video, by the way, if you're watching the podcast. I created these mugs. It says, I have herpes, don't steal my cup. So it's, I have herpes, don't steal my cup. And on the back it says, O'Reilly Podcast. This is my way of normalizing the topic of herpes, whether it comes to oral herpes or genital herpes. It's just a really funny way to kind of bring up the conversation. And it's something that I'm going to be doing, and I'm very proud of my mugs. So if you're ever interested in a mug, let me know. But I think they're fucking awesome, and it's just about normalizing the conversation. But there's also going to be episodes on, honestly, so much. There's going to be so much. There's also going to be a digital shop on there as well where I have different content. So if you don't want to actually be a member of Patreon, but there's a specific content that I've done, maybe a video recording or a topic that I've done that you want to listen to, you can actually kind of just go on and click and purchase just that particular video where, I've been really vulnerable about something, say, for example, herpes, you just want to get a little bit more information, then you can do that as well. But yeah, that's the future plans of O'Reilly Podcast. So still going to be having amazing content all the time, trust me, all the time for everybody to listen to. But those more vulnerable topics that are just that little bit more kind of sensitive to put out there and puts a lot of energy and time for me to put it out there, they're going to be for the OG members. So that is what's happening with O'Reilly Podcast. That's the direction that I'm going into. And I'm really excited because I love being a creator and I love sharing and I love podcasting. And I've got honestly so many ideas to level up O Really podcast. So watch this space. And if you ever want to follow me, I've got social media. So Instagram is oreally.podcast. And then my email is jess@oreallypodcast.com. And you can just honestly reach out anytime. You can even write little comments, like especially on Spotify, you can write a comment under an episode and I see it and I get to publish it. And I really love when people write comments and even give me reviews. Like honestly, every time I see reviews going up, I get so excited because I'm like, oh, people are actually like clicking that button. So when you're following a podcast, when you're clicking review and when you're clicking 5-star, you know, the creators behind the scenes see this stuff and it makes them so excited. So spread the word, please. I would absolutely love that. And please reach out anytime and get ready for phase 2 of O Really Podcast. I love you all and thank you so much for all your support. Mwah.